I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. That song, Crowded Table by the Highwomen, was kind of an anthem for St. John's over the past year. And I will tell you that it has haunted me this week because many of us are realizing that this time last year, we were at Mara Vista on a parish-wide retreat, singing those songs and being together in this concept of St. John's working actively to be a community that creates a crowded table is so challenging right now in this time of physical distance and a time that we're not gathering. And it is so challenging to think about that. And yet, we are still called to be the church. We are still called to work for that crowded table. It may not be literal right now. It may be more figurative and an image of how we create a crowded table during this strange time. Philippians leans towards that. How do we be a crowded table, a community? How are we church today in the weird time that we're in? And there's this call to servant leadership, a way of being in the world that cares for the least, the lost, and the last. And realizing that when we do that, we ourselves become more whole as human beings. I have to tell you, I had a moment this week, a morning, where church wasn't really on my mind. I was going over to get a tool for a friend so that I could do some work. And I dropped by with my puppy dog, and I picked up this saw that I needed. And I was driving back, and I was driving through neighborhoods, and I called somebody that goes to our church that I hadn't seen, and I knew she would love to see this puppy dog. My puppy dog, Olive. And she came out and we stood a long way apart and she met my dog from a distance. But before I left, she said, "Oh, I have something for you." And she handed me 2 prayer shawls that somebody else in the church had knitted and given to her. And so I put them in my car, had my saw, had my puppy dog, and I was driving. And I was driving along, and I thought, oh, I know somebody I can drop this off to. And so I went by with my puppy dog in the prayer shawl, and I went to this house of somebody who's been caring for somebody who's sick. And the woman who had been struggling with an illness came out and said, "Oh, I already have one of those." And I said, "I know. It's for him." And I gave him the prayer shawl. And he met the dog, and we laughed, and he said, "Thank you." And then I drove again, and I said, "Oh, I know somebody else." And I dropped it by a person's house whose 2020, we'll just say, might win for the worst 2020. At least it's in the top 3 of bad 2020s. And I just left it on her doorstep, and I texted her and said, "Hey, I left you a hug from St. John's." And I went home. And what I will tell you is that it changed me. It reminded me that we can be a crowded table, that we can be church, we can be community, even in these strange times, even when we don't get to do all those things that I love to do with church. I've said many times that preaching to a camera is very difficult for me. I think it should be difficult for just about anybody. But I have to tell you, I see you in my head. As I look at this camera, I see your faces, and I am reminded that we are still a crowded table. And so as we listen to Philippians, it says to care for others. How will we do that? Think about times when you have been the recipient of great love, and just reflect upon that. For me, when I reflect upon that time, when those times when I have been the recipient of those hugs from St. John's or other communities, what I've realized, it has inspired me then to go out and serve. And so as we think this day about what it means to be church, I encourage you to look for opportunities to care for yourself by caring for others. These moments are all around us. It is a crowded table that we seek to be. We will gather again in this space, and we will sing together. Until then, may we take heart, be courageous, and be creative on how we can still be the church and make sure that there is room for all at the table.